Welcome back to the channel as we continue on part 3 of the WJ knuckle swap. We've got our 2001 XJ unit bearings so we can see the difference in them. This offset here, that's why we don't have to use the spacers. It's going to move the rotor in. So we want to use the spacers on the caliper brackets, which is good. Now the only thing I don't like, because this is roughly the same dimension wise, the back spacing where the axle shaft's actually going to touch the back of it. The height is about the same, but what I don't like is this bit here. It's just barely sticking over that. So this isn't as tall. It doesn't stick in as far as this one did. So that little bit that this was still in the register on the knuckle, now it's going to be solely on the welded in spacer. So now I'm not so sure about it being partially welded. It shouldn't go anywhere. It's got bolts, it's mostly welded. It can only go so far before it's absolute catastrophe. So I'm just going to put them in. But take that into consideration when you're welding your stuff. If you're not going to use this and you're going to use this spacer, you will have no penetration. This will not be sitting in the factory bore anymore. It's all going to be on this spacer. So it's good and bad. But I still think it's probably going to be alright. We're going to move on. When you see mine break off, you'll know not to do that. I found some more stuff I don't like about at least this. I got the Timken brand ones, and maybe it's different. Maybe they messed something up. Maybe this is a one-off issue. But it falls in the hole and is loose. The whole point of having this and this the same size and keeping this in here is so that the load is not on the bolts. Now I'm sure this isn't enough, maybe not enough to matter. It's definitely going to deflect and move around, or it could potentially. So I don't like this. If you like it, go ahead and do it. It does fix your spacing on your rotor. That spacer there doesn't bother me anymore. I'm just going to get some longer bolts and carry on. I'm going to put my stock ones ahead in here. I want to put these back in because these you actually still got to tap in. They're a good tight fit. And I like that this goes in just a little bit. I don't feel so bad about it. Another thing is I'm running the stock 15-inch wheels. My tie rod right here is going to be so close to the wheel. And this moving the wheel in so that you can line this up. I'd rather space this out and leave the stock one on, leaving the wheel further out to give me just a little more room on my tie rod, so hopefully I can get away with it. With the other one, with this, I'm definitely not. With this, we'll be close, but I think I might get away with it. So I'm going to put these back in, and we're going to run with it. I'll return those other ones and buy some replacement ones to replace these. This one seems fine. This one seems fine. The other side's got a little growl to it. I never heard it driving it, but just spinning it in my hand, you can hear it. Well, let's go grab it. Where did you go? Oh. Ah. That was before welding and getting it hot. It made this sound. So I'm going to slap these back in and use them for mock-up so I can continue on making my steering stuff, and I'll order new bearings. Just so everything's fair, this is the part number I ordered off Rock Auto. If you know of another part number that I was supposed to get, but this was for a 2001 Jeep Cherokee. So maybe I got the wrong one, so just to give this a fair review, there's the part number that I bought for this project. And I'm going to return them and get ZJ ones. I went and got my rotors. Now, we're going to set this rotor on that rotor and then mark it, and then we'll drill it. And before anyone overthinks the crap out of it, these are hub centric. They have the same hub. It centers up on the hub. It does not center on the stud holes. So if you're off a little bit, if you got to make them a little bigger to make it work, it doesn't matter. It's going to center here. As long as it will fit, it's going to be fine. Don't overthink it. Slap that on there, put 5 holes in it and move on. Alright, first test fit. Hopefully this is the last mock-up we gotta do. Put that thing up there. That'll do it. A little note for anybody, I don't really think you can drive these without your axles in, because the axle is actually holding the bearing together. Now, if you have a problem and you break an axle and you want it out, you can go get these stub axles out of, I guess it's stub axle. All it does is hold the bearing together on a 2-wheel drive Jeep, and you can slap those in. Because right now you can, like if you drove it, I imagine you can't get too far and it will come apart. So keep that in mind. Don't try to do that. Let's see, bolt, spacer. We'll be getting longer bolts. Son of a... Damn that spacer. Hopefully this pushes it in the direction we want, away from the wheel once we get it all on. And then I can use my wheels the way they are. Come on. It looks like it centers it pretty decent in there. It's pretty close. And don't forget, this thing's sitting in there. Bearing is loose. Alright, we got our pads in. I went and compressed the caliper. Oh, so much easier. The caliper's going to be pushed all the way that way up against the pad. The pad's not that worn out, so that's the set. That's where it's going to be whenever we get the brake lines hooked up and actually have it compressed or set. So now we can stick our wheel back on and just see how close we're going to be. Come on. We're not scraping sitting here. I guess I'll get my phone with the light on it and we'll take a look from the backside. Shoot, we're still just as close. We might have a little more room. But it's not touching. So I'll probably trim it just a little bit. I'd say if looking at where this right here, it kind of dives away, it dives in just after this. So if you had 2-inch wheel spacers, I really don't think you'd have a problem at all. You'd have more clearance everywhere. And I may just get some wheel spacers. I've got other issues with the front tie rods, so they clear, but they're close. 2-inch wheel spacers would help with that too. Eventually we'll get wheels, but not this trip. Alright, I've got the knuckles on, the brakes are on, everything's ready to go. Now, at this point, it depends on what you want to do with your steering. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe you could hook your original steering back up and it would work. You're not taking advantage of the design of the WJ knuckle steering-wise, but you got the big brakes. But I believe you could hook up your Y-link. The width may be different. I'm not even going to attempt to put this back on. So you might just put that right back on and get right back to driving without having to mess with it. I'm not even going to attempt it. I've got, like in the first video, I've got the 1-ton tie rods, and there's my DOM for the builder kit. And it was really close before, but now that the rotors are on, I've got room. Like these things, even if you go full flex, yeah, we've got room. It's not going to hit our tire or our wheel. So now I've got to get these straightened out and measure the toe. Hopefully I can get something to rig the wheels from just flopping around. And we'll get a measurement, tie rod to tie rod, or center to center. And we'll just go tie rod to tie rod so we can get our length of how long we need to cut our DOM. And I think this is where I'm going to leave these. I think I'm going to leave the adjustment right there so I have a little bit more I can go in. But the bulk of the stud is in the tube. So that should be the strongest, all the way in and be the strongest. But then if you need to tow it in a little more, you can't. So I'll get this rigged up somehow, and then we'll take that measurement, we'll cut a tube, and we'll break the welder out again. This was the easiest way I figured it out. Push this forward, take this, and jam it in there. Now we can roll it around where we need, and just move this to hold our tire straight. So that'll take some tweaks to get that straight, or straight enough. It's adjustable, so if it's not absolutely perfect, it doesn't matter, just as long as you're close. Got my wheels as straight as I can get them. Got the tie rods adjusted where I want, so all I got to do is measure from this tip to that tip. $45.25, get it. So now I just got to take our DOM to the bandsaw and cut it to that length. I've got it cut to length. Now, one thing to keep in mind is there are left and right hand threads. If you put the same, if you put two left-hand threads on, you have to take a tie rod end off to adjust it. So don't mess up and do that. Well, left hand on one side or right hand on the other. That's probably about the limit of what my welder was made for. It's just the Eastwood TIG 200. But I think it'll be enough to get the job done. Hopefully this will do the trick. I beveled it on the belt sander too, so it's actually filling a crevice. I hope that's good enough. It should be. Now, this thing's so big and so thick. Now, when I get this thing bigger and maybe 37s and get harder wheeling, but If that held up, I mean, I did bend that, but if that tiny stock garbage held up, then this will be fine. It's all welded up, and it looks like Rough Stuff gave us a little context clue. I think this one's the left-hand thread, and it's got this spot on it. It's got these spots where the other one doesn't. Pretty sure that's the right, and that's the left. I've got it in. Now, it looks like we are just getting away with some more stuff, like just barely. I'm gonna build my own track bar mount and everything to move it further up, and as long as it doesn't get in the way of the drag link, we're getting away with it right now by hairs. By that much. We're at full lock and we barely miss it. Now let's make sure we can go all the way to the other side. Get this zoomed back out. Knock him hitting the caliper over here. We'll get this out of the way. Yeah, we're good to go. We made it. By that much. Cool. Tie rods clear the wheels. We're not going to have a problem. Now, something I figured out when I put this back on, because I put it back on backwards of the way I made it, is that the depth that I made the tie rod holes, or the taper, when I put it in backwards, it went in too deep. So I had to put the tie rods I drilled it for back in the spot it came out of, and then it sat at the right height. I ended up sinking it a little more. I'm just going to get a spacer to go under the nut to line up the castle nut part for the cotter pin. But this doesn't need to rotate. It just needs to go this way. So that also limited its amount of flex. Now it may cut the boot, hopefully not. But it got it further away from the wheel. So that helps. But now I got to line it back up, make sure the steering wheel's centered, and make sure the pitman arm's centered, you know, go lock to lock, and then find the middle where the steering wheel's straight so the pitman arm's in neutral, in its neutral position, and then straighten the wheels back up, and then I can measure from my drag link. I'm going to do something a little different on the upper one. I'm not going to sink it as far. It's still going to be partially on the threads. It gets up to about here. But if I go any further, whenever this maxes out, it's going to max out hitting the knuckle instead of maxing out the ball joint. Now, at this angle, I'd have to have a hell of a lot more lift for that to be a problem. They also make, if you've got something really lifted and you need it to naturally have this so that you're still in the center of the ball, they make them where this is, you know, at an angle, and this is still sitting in its neutral position. So whenever I go much larger on the lift, I'll end up changing out the ends to have that. But this is what I'm going to do for now, because I don't want it to max out on the housing. I want it to max out the ball itself, not cut the boot, and I hope that'll be alright. So now I just got to ream that out and measure it again. We got our tie rod ends on. The knuckles aren't that bad to ream. This one was, it took a good bit of time. It's a little thicker, I think. It's actually probably a little harder too, maybe. But they're on there. I've got the steering wheel straight. I've got the wheel straight. So now all I've got to do is measure that, cut it, weld it, and I'm not going to film that because it's going to look just like when I made this one, only it's going to be shorter. And note, if you want to hook up your sway bars, you're not going to be able to use the factory bracket. I'm not running sway bars, so it doesn't bother me at all. I'm just going to cut the sway bar tab off. The track bar is going to work for now. You saw how close it was, but it's going to work. I think. Yeah, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. I'm not going to run a steering stabilizer right now. Whenever I build my track bar bracket or buy one to weld on or whatever I do, I'll do the track bar up front and a steering stabilizer. But that'll be later on down the road in another video. This will work in the woods for now. So I'm going to get to cutting and welding. Alright, it's done. It's on there. The angle is pretty nice. It's almost flat. And I don't even have a drop pitman arm or anything. And this is only a 3-inch lift. So whenever I go bigger with the lift, I'll be able to use all this stuff. because I think I might go 5.5. Maybe I might end up with 35s later on. That's probably as high as I'm going to lift it. I say that now, but I always want to build it bigger, so we'll see. You've definitely got to get rid of the sway bar bracket. And I wouldn't say plenty of clearance everywhere, but we're on the lock. And we got room. We got room. Close to the cover, but we got room. Now, my answer for whenever I do an aux locker or something with a different cover, if it has a clearance issue, is at that time, hopefully I'll have different wheels a little bigger, because I wanted to get offset tie rods in the beginning. I'm glad I didn't, because they absolutely would not have worked with these wheels. But the offset tie rods will push the bar forward, so I'll have even more room, which is fine. But other than that, it's all in there. It's all gonna work. That's gonna be it for this video. I've been working on this thing after work every day, and it's Saturday. It's almost 4 o'clock right now. I'm pretty tired. It's done. At least it's done at this stage. There's still lots more to do, but it will be drivable again. I'll get new bearings on the way, and now I get to take it all back apart, paint things, put new bearings in. I've got to rebuild the axles because the U-joints are crap, and then put it all back together again, because I think our next ride is going to be this upcoming Saturday. So I want to have it all ready for that. Anyway, all the subscribers, thank you. Anyone else watching, hit the button. And thank you for watching.